Former NFL quarterback and MAGA supporter Brett Favre was recently forced to repay the state of Mississippi $600,000 that he allegedly received illegally from welfare funds. And that's only a part of it, by the way. And so first, let me just say, nothing like having a millionaire football star getting money meant for poor people. You know, you got to be pretty poor to qualify for temporary aid for needy families. But yeah, Brett Favre getting a lot of that money. All right, so this happened, as I said, in Mississippi. And how? What is the question here? Okay. Well, the Mississippi Office of the State Auditor determined that Favre and one of his employees owed the state a total of $828,000 that were illegally dispersed to them from the state's welfare budget through at least one nonprofit he worked with, according to Auditor Shad White. After paying $600,000 this week, Favre must pay the remaining $228,000 in interest within 30 days to avoid a legal issue, Auditor Office spokesperson Logan Reeves told CNN. So now the question is why? Why did he owe that money? Well, apparently he is one who allegedly did not fulfill the terms of their contract when he had worked with a nonprofit. Now, this nonprofit happened to have been in the middle of a gigantic, sprawling scandal involving the Mississippi head of the DHS. So now, let's see. Now, White said Favre had accepted the money for speaking engagements that he never attended for a group called Families First for Mississippi, one of the nonprofits involved in the alleged scheme. Last year, Favre agreed to repay a total of $1.1 million and made an initial payment of $500,000. So, of course, the $600,000, he went to pay the rest of the $1.1 million. But then, of course, there was interest on that. And so that's what he owes left. And so now he said, look, I didn't know the funds were illegal when I got them. Okay, he said, I never received money for obligations I didn't meet. And this was back in May of 2020. To reiterate Auditor White's statement, I was unaware that the money being dispersed was paid for out of funds not intended for that purpose. And because of that, I am refunding the full amount back to Mississippi. As he should. The misappropriated funding was revealed when the Mississippi Office of the State Auditor examined how the State Department of Human Services used their funding. White said in the news release dated October 12th, after 2 years of work, we found tens of millions of dollars in misspending. Those findings have now been confirmed this month by an independent forensic audit commissioned by DHS. The details, of course, are as follows. Two nonprofits, the Mississippi Community Education Center and the Family Resource Center, either misspent or improperly dispersed portions of that $77 million, meaning the money was ultimately misspent by a vendor to a nonprofit. So now I have some obvious questions here. How did the money meant for poor people end up going to nonprofit organizations and then ultimately to Brett Favre? How did that even happen? Turns out, massive corruption scandal. So now John Davis, the former director of the Mississippi Department of Human Services, former DHS employee Latimer Smith, Dr. Nancy New, owner and director of the Mississippi Community Education Center, and New Learning Incorporated, Zach New, Nancy's son, assistant director of the MCEC, Ann McGrew, accountant for MCEC, Brett DeBias, were all arrested in connection with a multi-million-dollar embezzlement scheme. The indictments include a range of violations involving wire fraud and embezzlement. Auditors concluded that after an 8-month investigation that the accused conspired to illegally obtain millions in public funds from TANF and used a variety of business entities and schemes to defraud taxpayers. And I would assume that's kind of how the money actually ended up in Favre's bank account. So the details get even more interesting. So now Davis and Smith, for example, are accused of manufacturing documents to enrich DeBias using TANF money, Davis and Smith created invoices to pay him for teaching classes about drug abuse. Now, that's ironic because at the same time he was allegedly teaching these classes, he was also in rehab for drugs. He was addicted to opioids. Oops. Nancy New and her son, Zach New, also were accused of using the news nonprofit MCEC to pay for that drug treatment using welfare funds at Davis's direction. The news also stand accused of transferring millions of dollars in funds to their private businesses. They then converted the funds to their personal use and concealed the conversion through various transfers, fraudulent documents, and at least one forged signature, as well as deceptive accounting measures. Holy shit balls. And finally, Davis and the news are accused of creating a fraud scheme to take TANF funds to pay for personal investments in their medical device companies, Prevacus Inc. and Presol MD LLC, located in Florida. Jesus. By the way, it gets even better. Now, new charges. Back in March, Nancy and Zachary New were also hit with 17 additional counts, including wire fraud, identity theft, and money laundering. I mean, the total jail time that might end up facing is in the hundreds of years. According to the indictment, Nancy New and Zachary New submitted fraudulent reimbursement claims for the salaries of teachers at their for-profit schools. As a result, New Learning Resources Incorporated, for-profit company owned by Nancy New and Zachary New, fraudulently obtained in excess of $2 million to which it was not entitled. And the two personally benefited from that fraud. The funds were also used for example, football tickets, religious concerts. Oh, the irony. Oh, let me just stop for a second. So religious, right? These people claim to be Christian. And what's one of the big tenets of supposedly in Christianity? The poor, right? Help the poor, help the needy. Literally taking money straight from the needy and giving it to themselves, and then going to church and religious concerts. And even using the money to go to the concerts. They also used it on lobbyists, as well as fitness programs for state lawmakers. Holy shit balls. Wow. Now, again, you might be wondering, what happened? How did Brett Favre get involved? So now look, let's be very clear, okay? There's no evidence he was actually in on the scheme. He just received the money. So my question is, of course, if you're getting all that money for speeches that you didn't actually do, how did you not notice that in your bank account? Look, I know Favre's got millions of dollars, right? He's super, super rich person. Okay, even if you have money, you didn't check your bank account and notice oh, look at that. I have 1.1 million extra dollars. Huh. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, it's from the place that I said I was going to do speeches for that I didn't actually do yet. Huh. Again, the money is there and you took it. Are you sure? You had no idea where it came from? Look, I understand that you probably had no idea that it was actually welfare fraud money. There's no evidence to show that he actually had any knowledge of that, but he did know whether or not he had done the speeches, and he didn't. And that's important context, because I'm going to go through and I'm going to talk about, of course, his response to this. So now, here's what he said on Twitter. And by the way, this is Farve and Shad White now having a beef on Twitter over this entire thing. He said, as I have said before, I would never accept money for no-show appearances. But he did, and then was ordered to give it back. But he said, of course the money was returned because I would never knowingly take funds meant to help our neighbors in need. But for Shad White to continue to push out this lie that the money was for no-show events is something I cannot stay silent about. Despite all efforts to seek clarification with the auditor, he has never granted me a callback or a meeting with me, but has instead only repeatedly run to the media. Prioritizing sensational headlines over seeking truth is doing a disservice to the people of our great state. Deserve answers and a resolution. So now White responded by this. He said, these are lies. I'm not going to hide how much you were paid, why you were paid, or conduct backroom meetings to make this go away. The contract that justified the payment of $1.1 million in welfare money to you said that you were to speak at 3 total speaking engagements, provide 1 radio spot during the contract period, and provide 1 keynote speaking engagement. The CPA for Farve Enterprises confirmed that this was your contract. You did not give the speeches. You have acknowledged this in statements to my own agents. To suggest my office has not met with you is a lie as well. You have met with agents who work for me. They showed you the contract. They showed you the emails confirming the contract quoted above is how you were paid. To suggest I have only communicated to you this to you via the media is wrong. I'm doing my job. That's it. You can continue to use your megaphone as a celebrity to drown out the facts, but it will not change the facts. God damn. Oh, I love this guy. Look, he's probably, very likely he's probably a Republican. Again, it's Mississippi. I don't care. I love this. I love this. Because this guy's going, hey, wait a minute. Don't bullshit me. Don't lie to me. Here are the facts. You still owe us money that was taken from poor people. Pay the money. Give us back the money. With interest, by the way. And so, look, that is some epic shade. And by the way, the other reason that I like this guy, Shad White, is because he busted a shitload of fraudsters stealing from the people of Mississippi who are in massive need of welfare money. From this, down to this corrupt DHS administrator in the state. So I'm guessing on this issue, he's not going to bullshit around about this because he's already busted a whole bunch of people involved in this fraud network. And as for Farve, he was paid for something that he didn't do. Regardless of whether or not he knew the original source of the money was stolen, doesn't matter. You still end up having to pay it back. And again, he did take the money. He broke the contract. Therefore, sorry, you gotta give it back. Plus interest. I know it sucks. Think about it this way. If it weren't Brett Favre, if it were you that got a bunch of money for something that you didn't do, for a job that you didn't do, that you had agreed to on contract, and it turns out that money was stolen, you think that they would allow you to just to pay it back and continue? Or, would you end up in prison? I mean, how do you think you'd get treated in this situation? I'm just asking questions. But for him, for Farve, I think he's going to turn out okay. So I wouldn't worry too much about him and his personal finances or even his reputation. The guy's a multimillionaire. He's going to be fine. What I worry about is the people of Mississippi whose tax money, when it's not only wasted on these people in this gigantic fraud scheme, but also the poor people whose money was taken that should have gone to them to help them and their families. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share with your friends. You can subscribe and help out the channel by becoming a patron. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf, or you can become a channel member as well by hitting the join button below.